Hello girls, today we're talking about Miss Marvel, the Marvel character Kamala Khan, and let me get something clear, this is not yet another video when a grown-ass man tells you that Miss Marvel is a bad comic book because it's too political. No, if you want to listen to this, there are tons and tons of videos like that, so go watch one of them. I think it's pretty easy to find on YouTube. However, I'm not going to say that I was pleased with Miss Marvel and how it was handled, and I know there's a TV show coming. It will be on Disney Plus June 8th, and hopefully the video is out by then, but I won't talk about the comic book, especially the run by Willow Wilson, because I felt that even though it had a lot of potential, it did not deliver. And let's go into a deep dive on it. I remember back in 2013 or 2014, I first heard of Miss Marvel, the first Muslim superhero protagonist in a Marvel book, and I was like, wow, it sounds like Bend Like Beckham, only with superheroes, and I wanted to read it. So this is the first 5 issues, that's a translated version of course, of the Miss Marvel adventures. The title is No Normal. Yeah, it was sort of like Bend Like Beckham, only not this way. Bend Like Beckham is a 2002 British rom-com about soccer, or as we Europeans call it, football, and we have this 18-year-old Sikh girl who wants to play football, but your family is disapproving of her, and they want you to get married to a rich man and be a good daughter, I guess. And as she is playing football in secret, she falls in love with her white coach, and also she has a friend, a very young Keira Knightley. And this movie was a huge success. Also, it was very important to Keira Knightley's career. That movie, along with Pirates of the Caribbean, kickstarted her career because, yes, of course, if you have a movie about minorities, everybody will notice the pretty white girl. Right. It was directed by Gurinder Chadha, a Desi director who is an expat in the UK, and the entire body of her work, I believe, is about South Asian women and how they live their lives in the UK and the challenges they face. And in order to do that, in order to follow her dream of becoming a director and making those movies about women, she had to break away from the patriarchal traditions of her family, that is Desi, that is Sikh, and even though it's not Muslim, like in Kamala Khan's case, yes, I know that Pakistan and India are different countries, but it's mostly a difference of religion. We go into the story of Pakistan was the Muslim Indians that were exiled when India was decolonized, so those two cultures are quite close to one another. But what makes Bend Like Beckham breakaway hit, it was not the fact that we have this representation, this story of a Desi girl. It's because it channels the age-old coming-of-age trope of a family disapproving of their child's dream, and the young adult has to follow their own road, has to rebel, has to break away from the family tradition and its close-mindedness and pursue her dreams. The fact that instead of a white family you have a much more patriarchal and traditional Sikh family does help, because it makes for some great comedy. It's a very charming movie, it's a very fun movie, and also because it's easier to believe that in 2002 there's a family that is so strict on its children in the Western world. And this is what reminded me of Bend Like Beckham when it came to No Normal. Miss Marvel is a comic book about Kamala Khan. Kamala Khan is a 16-year-old Pakistani American. She's living in New Jersey, not New York. Surprise, surprise for Marvel Comics, she lives across the river where nothing happens, and she's a bit of a superhero fangirl. I mean, she's even writing Avengers fanfics in her spare time. She's a huge fan of Captain Marvel, Carol Danvers, the former Miss Marvel. But the book starts with her having this gripe of, I want to be normal, I want to be like other kids. Literally, the very first page of this comic book is about Kamala Khan wanting to eat some bacon, but she cannot because it is not halal. And also another part of her, another trait of her, is that she wants to be perfect. Her name translates to perfect. Kamala means perfect, and she wants to please people, especially her own family, which is, let's say, colorful, because she's got this extremely conservative brother who is into scripture, and he dresses up like I don't know, a shepherd from a Bible movie. Her father is a banker and he wants her to study and become a doctor and rich, because apparently her brother is a bum, so somebody has to bring the bacon to the family. And then her mother is paranoid that she's going to touch a boy and become pregnant or something, and she should be careful and she should wear her jacket when she goes out. I'm not sure if it's the book, but yes, it's very overprotective. And I think that these are some very interesting traits, some very interesting flaws and challenges for her character, and they can lead to some very deep exploration of her character and some unique challenges. That's something that I appreciated a lot in this book, the way it begins. And of course there is always the character of Bruno, who is her Italian best friend, who has a huge crush on her, and I'm not quite certain the way it starts that Kamala is not exactly into him, or she won't be into him later on, but we'll see how it goes. Due to some shenanigans, she gets superpowers, and she chooses to adopt the moniker of Miss Marvel, the moniker used by her biggest hero, Captain Marvel, before she became Captain Marvel. And that makes her the first Muslim superhero. Maybe not the first one, I mean there was always Dusk, but she was one of the X-Men characters, so I'm not quite sure. So yeah, let's talk about the shenanigans, because this Muslim American girl is an Inhuman. Alright, Marvel. In case you're not aware what Inhumans are, because you only watched the MCU movies or just read Spider-Man, the Inhumans were a race of people that was introduced in the early Fantastic Four comic books by Stan Lee and Jack Kirby. They're basically some humans where they were given some latent supernatural abilities by an alien race, I believe it was the Kree, because they wanted soldiers in their Kree-Skrull war. Yes, the Kree were the Captain Marvel aliens during the movies, and by following a procedure of using some Terrigen crystals, some unique chemicals, the people who have the potential to become Inhumans do become Inhumans. So because Fox used to own X-Men, Marvel decided to sidetrack the X-Men and have the Inhumans be the next big thing, and this was a spectacular failure. So in order to get more Inhuman characters, they had a big event where Terrigen mists that were toxic to the mutants or something, I'm not quite sure. They were unleashed in New York and New Jersey, and Kamala Khan comes in contact with one of them and she becomes an Inhuman. And of course everybody wants to read about Inhuman characters because it sounds so cool and politically correct. No, they're not Eternals. Eternals are a different race of super beings created by Jack Kirby, alright? If you want to see Inhumans in the MCU, there was a TV show called The Inhumans that failed spectacularly. And also, I think there were a lot of Inhuman stuff in the TV show Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. In Season 2 there were a lot of Inhuman characters there, and one of the main cast was an Inhuman. Or was it Season 3? I'm not sure, really, but yes, there were Inhumans in Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. I believe that for the TV show, Kamala won't be an Inhuman. And what's her power? In the comic book, her power is that she can enlarge or shrink her body. And you definitely don't want to know the scientific explanation of it, because at some point it is explained how she does that, and it makes zero fucking sense. And yes, we're talking about comic books about latent genes of extraterrestrials making people into different species. Even then it makes zero sense, believe me, trust me. So, even though Kamala has to hide her secret identity because Her parents are very worried about her and she wants to keep it a secret. She has to save people, and she actually saves people bullying her because she's a good girl. She's a decent human being. And as kids disappear, she has to use her powers in order to save them. And yeah, that's a perfect opening. It hits all the spots. It introduces a sympathetic character, a teenager next door who has very real problems, and she gets powers. She has a call to action and some struggles that are very interesting, not seen too much. I mean, the fact that she comes from a Desi family, a Pakistani family, means that she's not your average WASP teen. So she has to deal with weird family, some sort, some challenges that most teenagers in the US in 2013 do not face. I mean, I do remember John Michael Straczynski, when he was talking about his infamous run Spider-Man, he had this moment where Peter has to come clean and reveal to Aunt May that yes, I'm Spider-Man. And of course Aunt May tells him, oh boy, I thought you were gay. And makes perfect sense. I mean, Peter Parker was always in the closet, come to think of it, only with Spider-Man, not because he liked dudes. And he said that, to me, this need for Peter Parker to hide his secret identity from Aunt May, it felt weird because he had grown in a Polish Catholic family and he understood that his parents would accept that yes, I'm Spider-Man. But for Stan Lee and Jack Kirby, who were Hebrew, who were Jewish, of Jewish origin, it will make perfect sense because their families were much more overprotective. And here we have the same effect with Kamala Khan. And actually, Kamala Khan, Miss Marvel, in this first arc, does have a lot of Peter Parker energy. She's teen, she's a bit naive, her motives are not, well, she wants to do good, she also has a selfish streak of sorts, and yeah, there is a lot of Peter Parker energy in this one, and this is why it works. This comic book, No Normal, great title, definitely represents the core issues of the character, that she's not normal, even though she wishes to be normal, has a lot of the Spider-Man energy in it, and it's no wonder it became a success. I mean, you can make conspiracy theories about evil leftists coming in and trying to impose their agendas, but no, it's a very good comic book. If I want to complain about something, well, it takes 5 issues to give us the plot of what could be a TV pilot of sorts. But then again, that's modern comics, they're paced for the trade. So I realized that when I'm getting a floppy, I'm not getting a full story, I'm getting 1/5 or 1/6 of a story. If I get this trade, yes, I'm getting one story, if I'm lucky. This is just the first Miss Marvel adventure, and it does not wrap up the storyline, just, a first taste. And it leaves a lot of interesting plot points to move forward. I mean, I can think of some just by recapping what happens in this story very briefly. And first point that I'm very sure we'll soon see, that Kamala Khan has to go through a whole lot of shenanigans to hide her secret identity from her family. The second plot point, I guess that within a couple issues she is meeting her idol, Captain Marvel, Carol Danvers, and she will scold her because she is a teen with the superpowers and she's out there, she has no training, she's making things worse, she's putting people in danger. After all, Carol Danvers was in Civil War and she turned against the rest of the Avengers because teens should not be superheroes. You remember that, it happened in 2005. It was not like in the movies. And Kamala Khan would have to, she will definitely take a beating, she will definitely feel wrong about it, that her idol rejects her, but she will prove herself. That would be a great story arc. You'd love it when it happens. And finally, I'm very certain that she and Bruno are going to snog. No, sorry, that's British slang, they're going to make out at some point, alright? I mean, it's written there, it makes perfect sense. So let's see what happens in the rest of the run. Volume 2 of Miss Marvel is called Generation Y, and that's a great sort of wordplay between why is happening and also millennials, Generation Y. So it's another 5 issues of Miss Marvel facing against the villain of No Normal, the inventor, who is a clone of Thomas Edison mixed with a Kokaru that makes big robots. And this is the point where I get the impression that this book is not for me. This is a book for girls who feel that they're too old for Powerpuff Girls because they're big robots. There is a joke of a villain, and we have got this girl who has, very teen problems and also can make huge fists and punch things. Whatever, it's kind of good, And the best part about Miss Marvel, of course, is the art. Miss Marvel had for a long time 2 main artists, Adrian Alfona and Takeshi Miyazawa, and they're both great. They've got great cartoonist art style, and it definitely fits the character of the book. Especially, I think Miyazawa has this tendency of hiding Easter eggs all over the pages and having little details despite the more cartoony feel. And both have this very energetic style, very evocative. It's perfect for the book. The art is, for quite a few issues with those 2 artists, the art is definitely great. And you may not enjoy the writing, the art is spot on. It was a huge selling point for me for this book. Of course, Kamala has to do her team-ups after her initial story is wrapped up, and she teams up with Wolverine at some point, and she guest star in a Spider-Man book, and both of those characters are like, girl, you're great, go on. Nobody tells you that you're young, where you're going to get yourself killed and other people killed. Watch out, but whatever. Volume 3 Crust is about Kamala getting involved with Inhumans. The Inhumans have moved into Hudson River, and they have this Game of Thrones style plots with them. A lot of stuff are happening, there is intrigue, there's a new potential love interest, and the way this is done is very interesting. I did enjoy reading this volume a lot more than Generation Y, because it feels like there are some stakes here, there's some character building, and Miss Marvel, Kamala Khan, feels a lot more into the MCU, are more into the Marvel universe, but still the book remains isolated in her own neck of the woods in New Jersey. And it's some sort of, you can ignore anything else happening in the Marvel books and just read these volumes, and it makes perfect sense on its own. Yes, if you want to see more, you go and read Inhumans or other books from that era, and it's a bit of an extra, but you don't lose anything by ignoring that. And having these self-contained stories for Miss Marvel, her being New Jersey and not stumbling upon other superheroes all the time, is actually a reason why this book was successful, because you have this teenage girl character, the art style is cartoony, it's fun, it doesn't feel like it's another edgy superhero book for older men. And yeah, I think this book did reach a new audience, and that's why it was such a big success. That's why Marvel banked so much on Miss Marvel. And the fact that it is self-contained means that you can get book 1, book 2, book 3, book 4 from your local bookstore, from your local Barnes & Nobles, or from the library, and you can keep on reading and everything makes sense. That's something that US comics don't do that often, and this is why they face so much challenges. I'm talking about big 2 superhero comics. It was a breath of fresh air. And speaking of self-contained, here comes Volume 4, Last Days, which is an event tie-in. It ties into the big Secret Wars event. The world is ending, apparently. All sort of mayhem ensues, and Kamala Khan gets to meet Captain Marvel, who is like, girl, I'm a fan. You're doing great. And towards the end of this arc, she has the talk with Bruno, who confesses how he feels about her, and she's like, I'm not ready yet. And the world ends. Just like that. So, yeah, that's the end of the first run of Captain Marvel, the first 19 or 20 issues, I believe. I'm not sure if it was 19 or 20 issues, to be honest. But yes, that's Volume 1 Captain Marvel. That's Volume 1 Miss Marvel. And it was mostly good. I'm using volume mostly for the graphic novels, alright? So don't be too confused. It's the first 4 volumes are Volume 1 of Miss Marvel, and the other 6 is Volume 2. It's no wonder that Kamala Khan, Miss Marvel, was a huge success. Yes, there is the representation aspect, that we have a Muslim superhero, that Kamala Khan is a great model for Desi and Muslim girls all over the world. They can see themselves into Kamala, and it's fun, art style is great, writing is fun, it is somewhat relatable, it's not too heavy on the Marvel lore, you can easily follow it, it's enjoyable. I mean, I enjoyed reading those books, not all of them. I was a bit frustrated with Last Days, to be honest, because there was a time. Yeah, I'm not following Marvel events, honestly. I'm not the kind of a person who follows Marvel stuff or DC stuff anymore. So yeah, just stumbling upon big events really burns me out, really reminds me why I left the US comics, and I'm just returning here and there for some good runs, I guess, or I'm going back into the past and reading older books where things were simpler. However, let me complain about something, or maybe not complain, maybe ponder about something, about the representation aspect that I've mentioned. Kamala Khan as a character came from San Amanat, the editor of this book. San Amanat is a Pakistani American, and I think she was in the Marvel bullpen, and she was retelling some anecdotes from her childhood about how it was being a Muslim and raised in the US, and to some other editor. And they were like, that's great, let's make a book based on that. And this is how they approached Willow Wilson to write this book. And I can see that the lived experience of San Amanat, being a Desi girl growing up in the US and having to deal with those dual identities of being in the West but also being part of a Muslim family, and of course being a nerd and a comic book fan, does reflect on Volume 1. Kamala Khan in No Normal definitely carries a lot of who San Amanat is. That's why it feels so relatable. The writer for the book, though, Willow Wilson, she's a Muslim woman, alright? But she has a very different lived experience. From what I've read, she was born in a very secular family. Her parents were atheists, also white Protestants. And after college, she moved to Egypt, she converted to Islam, and she married an Egyptian man. So her childhood, her teenage years, are not the teenage years of a brown girl that is Muslim in the US. And as the comic book progresses on and on, you can see that the focus of Kamala Khan's background shifts from trying to be normal in let's say more backwards family, more traditional family, and the alienation that comes from this. And alienation is a big aspect of being a superhero. You don't fit, that's why you work outside the law, outside the norms of society, and you use your superior powers to solve problems outside of all those institutions. You have to be alienated, because if you are perfectly well adjusted and you put on a mask, a costume, and fight crime instead of becoming a police officer or something, you're just a prick. And alienation is a very important aspect for superheroes, because it adds to why they are fighting why they're using their powers outside of institutions, and also adds drama to them. Instead of focusing on that, after Volume 2, you can see that a lot of Kamala Khan's identity becomes about the feeling of belonging, of being in a loving family, in a community that supports you. And I won't complain about that, because honestly, in media that is filled with Muslim terrorists or the treatment of women in Asian countries, here we see something different, a different aspect of Islam and Eastern cultures, I guess. We see families that are together, that support their people. Yes, they have expectation of them, but they're willing to accept them and love them. And this is mostly tough love. The need for protection is about caring and love, not about control or being weird or being evil. And my personal experience with Muslim people, either as a student, having students who were also from Arabic countries, or actually Muslim Greeks I've met, they're great people. They're very warm, they're very hospitable, and of course, yes, I come from South Europe, so some aspects of this culture, of the more tight-knit family, yes, I've encountered them in my culture. That's how the Mediterraneans or the Middle Easterns, or I guess even South Asians do act. That's how we are to some extent. But this also means that it shifts away from all the challenges that Kamala has to face because she's different. And she's different not only because she's Muslim, but also because she's inhuman. But very soon Kamala's mother learns her secret identity. She confronts her, and she's very understanding and loving about it. The strict mullah that she's afraid of is actually very understanding and a pillar of strength to all her travails, to all her challenges. Her brother, who is cartoonishly Muslim, is not a possible terrorist. Instead, he spends half an issue later on telling some, I'm not sure which agency it is, some agents about why he's not a terrorist. A person like him cannot be a terrorist. It's actually more like the radicals are more like disappointed Westerners instead of traditionalists. So yeah, that's a different aspect. That's probably something that Willow Wilson did find in religion, but as a literary, as part of the story, it lowers the stakes, and that's a very, very big problem because you need stakes. Furthermore, I do remember watching a TED Talk, and I think it was Willow Wilson that says that they believe that they'll do 10 or 12 issues and then the series would get cancelled for low sales. Ms. Marvel was a huge success, despite Ms. Marvel not being a success in the papers. When you see the descriptions, like, who will read this? It was a huge success. So when corporate ignores you, lets a creative team do their own thing and it's successful, what corporate does is they get involved. And Marvel being Marvel means that they would have to milk Kamala Khan dry. So she gets to be in more titles. She gets to be in the Ms. Marvel series, the Volume 2 series that's launching post Secret Wars, and she's also a member of the all new Different Adventures, and then the Champions. And let me be clear, I have read neither of those titles because I don't want to get into Marvel spaghetti continuity. I just want to read the Ms. Marvel comic books, and that's what I did. So if you're going to go into this video and say, but in these books, I don't care. Ms. Marvel, Volume 1 to Volume 10, that's how it's supposed to be read. And I have to dig up all new Different Avengers and Champions and read them in between. No, this is not how books are being read. These are things all the comic book nerds follow, alright? And I choose not to be a comic book nerd on this aspect. So I'm talking about those titles. Finally, I told you I'm going to some crackpot theories about the book being political propaganda, but I have to go for a tinfoil hat theory. Judging from where the book starts, I get the impression that Bruno is going to be a love interest. And it's built up this way. But then he is suddenly thrown out of the picture. And you know, the world is ending, just kiss the boy, alright? Kamala, kiss the boy. The world is ending, have a big scene about it, have the audience, the tween audience, soon about it. Then volume 2 starts and they feel weird because the world did not end and they have to deal with it, alright? That's how writing goes, alright? And Kamala has second thoughts because, yes, he's infidel, but they don't do that. And I get the impression that someone in Marvel saw that Kamala Khan is the model for all those young Muslim girls. And the idea that they have to show this model, tell these good Muslim girls, ignore your family, ignore your religion, ignore your tradition, go snog an infidel, no go. And maybe they were thinking that they will lose sales from a community that's very small. Or maybe they were thinking something different. Or maybe the creators didn't feel comfortable doing that, alright? Nevertheless, yes, I've made 3 predictions where this book will go, and by this point, all those 3 are out of the window. And it gets worse. Alright, now let's get to volume 5, aka Miss Marvel volume 2. And the graphic novel is super famous. And in this one, we're after Secret Wars, and Kamala Khan is an Avenger, and she can barely keep it together because she has to be the good family member, she has to be an A student, and also a superhero. And she tries to do everything, and it's not quite working. In the first story arc, she is tricked by Hydra. It seems like she's endorsing a construction company who is gentrifying worker homes, and it backfires. She also tries to make robot Kamalas to fight crime while she has little time, and this also backfires. And she also has the problem of Bruno, who has a new girlfriend, Mike. And don't let me get started on Mike, because Mike is a character I deeply didn't like. She's the Tumblr version of Manic Pixie Dream Girl. She has blue hair, she's chubby, she's goth, she has 2 mothers, and she's there just to heal Bruno's broken heart. Yep, that's... And Kamala, who was like, Bruno, I don't see you this way, I'm not ready, is jealous. And Bruno, he's not like a material boyfriend, right? She clearly still has feelings from Kamala. So yeah, that part, yes, it's teenage angst drama, and there is this whole subplot with blonde preppy cheerleader that was the bully from the previous volumes, the Flash Thompson sort of character of Kamala Khan becoming afraid of the group, and Nakia, Kamala's Turkish friend who is a feminist with a hijab, and all this sort of stuff. It's, you know, it started to get too bogged down with the side arcs, and yes, teen drama is part of the book, but the superhero aspect is not quite there. There seems to be a pattern emerging in the Miss Marvel adventures though, that Kamala has to deal with some jokes of villains, some very cartoony, jokey villains like Canadian ninjas, I believe, or something like that, or clowns with tongues, this kind of stuff, some joke villains, or you know, or the Hydra hipster. And sometimes she blunders, she makes a fool of herself, then her friends come together, they cheer her up, they tell her how great she is, and maybe they do a protest, and that makes Kamala Khan rebound, and she wants to go out and save the day. Basically, if you want to sum Kamala Khan, she is only challenged by her own self. by her own weaknesses, and she needs constant emotional support and validation to overcome this. And we're constantly being told, oh, Kamala is great, Kamala is a leader, Kamala is amazing, she does everything perfect, but we're never quite shown this. And of course, the superhero aspect is very Saturday morning cartoon. Probably that's the best way to explain why the next arc in the comic books did break her character forever. Civil War II was another event. It was another Marvel event, and I'll be straight with you, the last Marvel event I ever read was Dark Reign back in 2008. So yes, I've missed some stuff, alright? I'm not quite sure how to explain it to you. As far as I know, in Civil War II, Captain Marvel is convinced that an Inhuman who can predict the future crimes, is right, and that gives her the liberty to go all Minority Report and jail those future offenders, even though they commit no crime. Yeah, I know. These people may commit crimes, so let's put them into jail. Tony Stark, who started the previous Civil War because he wanted to stop teenagers from becoming superheroes, has enough brains to say, oh, that's fucking insane, I should stop you. And you know, heroes get divided because some superheroes in the Marvel Universe think that, yeah, maybe we should become a fascist state. It makes perfect sense. While the criminals do the crime, if we suspect they're criminals, let's put them into jail. That makes perfect sense. That's how free societies work. With storylines like that, it's no wonder that every Captain Marvel series gets cancelled faster than your racist uncle on Twitter. Of course, there is a whole subplot into this event, as far as I know, where the evil Nazi Captain America, because Captain America is a Nazi now, is manipulating that Inhuman Ulysses. And come on, Marvel, you have to pick a Greek name for your Oracle character and you call him Ulysses, the guy who was just smart and would trick everybody instead of, Apollo or Pythia or Daphne or whatever. Alright, I mean, come on, learn your mythology. So Captain Marvel goes to New Jersey and asks her number one fan, Kamala Khan, to help her maintain a prison, to go and catch local future offenders and put them into prison, along with some other very likable teens from the city. And Kamala, who is a huge fan of Captain Marvel, agrees to that, which makes no sense because, come on, she's Muslim. Her family probably had to go through hell because they existed in post 9/11 US. But no, instead she goes for it, she captures people, but she starts to get second thoughts about it, like,
are we the baddies?
And finally she rebels against the prison system, and this happens when her best friend / love interest Bruno tries to break people out of prison and he gets paralyzed. Go for it, Kamala. Go for it. And come to think of it, Miss Marvel's story arc in this book is pretty similar to how Peter Parker's Spider-Man was in the original Civil War. And also, Spider-Man was forever ruined after the event of Civil War because of One More Day and the reboot, etc. And the deal with everything, alright? So it's no wonder why, if you mention Miss Marvel, people would be like, oh, she was a brown shirt and was imprisoning innocent people. And yeah, I know. Some of you will say, oh, that's just misogynist Nazis who say that. But no, I think there was a video by Comics by Perch who was saying that, yes, my cousin or niece was reading Miss Marvel and she was very put off by the storyline. Actually, that's one of the reasons why I want to go into this video about why Miss Marvel failed as a character, because this made me think much more. And yes, there's a reason why this storyline destroyed Kamala Khan as a character forever. but let me just recap the rest of the Willow Wilson run before I get there, alright? Somewhere in this volume there is this one issue that really pissed me off, and the reason you'll find funny that I'm more pissed off about this one of issue than, you know, the whole brown shirt storyline, because the brown shirt storyline does make sense for Kamala's character. It actually addressed her love and admiration towards a superhero, her fangirling, and how it comes into opposition with who she really is, a decent person. So I can't complain for that, because for once this book did what it was set up early on. However, I'm very pissed with Miles Morales. So that's a one-off issue, right? Nothing important, just, you know, some filler. And there is a science school fair, and Kamala's school is facing off against Miles Morales' school. And as the two schools try to outdo one another, they whip up a cold fusion reactor, which leads me to believe that Willow Wilson and the editorial do not understand how science works, how continuity works, and how world building works. And since, you know, this issue is firmly set in the Marvel Universe, it means that your average high school student who is good at science can create anything. Really? Yeah. Actually, that's pretty much consistent with how Marvel works. But yeah, it's like it's no longer the world outside your window. It's like a dystopian cyberpunk landscape where a billionaire is above the law because he wears superhuman armor and is fighting aliens who are invading every 3 days. Sadly, I don't want to live in the Marvel Universe, alright? But let's get to Volume 7, Damage Per Second, which is yet another display of not understanding how science works, with the internet troll villain who is forcing Kamala to put him in a sealed facility, or he will reveal to everybody that one of her new friends, the blonde cheerleader, is in love with her Muslim friend. Yeah, that's the kind of story it is. And yes, there is a lot of cringe in this one, but actually it's fun. Actually, it's more closer to what Ms. Marvel is rather than the Civil War tie-in, because it's a small-scale story. It's got a lot of interpersonal drama, and it's kind of fun, quirky, weird, and it feels like there is something at stake here, which I haven't gotten in this comic book for quite a while. And also, this is where the two good artists leave the book. Both Alfona, he did his final issue for this series in the previous volume, and now Miyazawa, they leave the book, and other artists come in. They're not great. The art is definitely going downhill, and the writing is already there. So yeah, I mostly hate-read the rest of the story arcs. We have a new love interest introduced, a Pakistani superhero who is like Kamen Mask from Sailor Moon. He is kind of meh, he is trying to woo Kamala, but it's not quite working. They don't have the proper chemistry, I guess. Bruno goes to Wakanda, he has some misadventures there, and he manages to walk again because Wakanda has great technology. At this point, the comic book has reached a dead end, and the storylines that come definitely show that things are going downhill. Especially now that the pretty art is not pretty anymore, you start to notice all the cracks. People will tell you it's bad because of politics, but that's not the case. I've read some books that are supposed to be about bad politics ruining everything, and each and every one of them was bad or unsuccessful for a different reason. But you know, when you see that it's all about, the comic book is all about articles about representation, and now women are in comics despite always being there, and creators tweeting about politics, all this drama with fans, right-wing fans being very vocal and going their own way. You can say, oh yes, it's politics, but the comics is not bad because of politics. Don't get me wrong, there's some cartoonishly political plot lines in Miss Marvel. I mean, there is this plot line in Mecha, Volume 8, where the hipster Hydra agent illegally takes over some mayor and starts a pogrom against minorities and Inhumans, rounding up everyone who is different. So basically, the bad guys are doing what the good guys did in Civil War II, but they're villains. Just because the character with the name Marvel does that does not make it just Marvel.
What the hell is wrong with you?
Then we have one of the more challenging antagonists Miss Marvel ever faces, a runaway train. She spends 2 issues trying to stop this one, and of course we have this Red Dagger, the Pakistani superhero character who is also on the train, and they flirt, and it's a superhero that tries to stop a runaway train for 2 issues, something that Silver Age superheroes would do in 2 panels. And at some point towards the end of this 8th issue run, Miss Marvel does face a proper supervillain. She has to face a Spider-Man D-lister known as the Soccer. In case you don't do comics, you only watch Marvel movies, he was a grunt for Vulture in Homecoming. He was the guy with the brown vest, I believe, that had some vibro gauntlets. Yes, that's the Soccer in the MCU. He was not even named as such. I squealed when I saw him because I have a soft spot for Soccer, Spider-Man villain. I think he was one of the first villains in the Spider-Man animated series from 1993. Alright, so I do like the guy, and actually, yes, his power is vibrating things, so he should be called the Vibrator, and they make this joke in this comic book, alright? And of course, faced with a proper supervillain, Kamala hardly makes it, mostly because her friends decide to help, and also because Deus Ex Machina, her powers work in mysterious ways, and yada yada yada. And this is where I'll stop about the story arcs in Miss Marvel, because the Civil War II tie-in did not break Miss Marvel on its own. The cracks were already there, and I think that when there was more tension put into the character of Miss Marvel, everybody saw the cracks. There was nothing steady here to keep the story for breaking. Miss Marvel is not a great hero. And I know I'm not the target demographic. The target demographic is definitely more female than me and definitely younger than me. But storytelling is universal. And let me tell you what, I feel that when Miss Marvel started in 2013, it was written for 13-year-old girls. When Willow Wilson left the book in 2019, Miss Marvel was written for 13-year-old girls. You see, in a lot of successful franchises, like for instance Harry Potter, the character grows along with the reader. And as more people grow, they will come in, they'll start reading and follow their journey. I mean, Harry Potter did that. Sailor Moon did that. And Sailor Moon had the same target demographic as Miss Marvel. And Harry Potter too. Even if you go to, Spider-Man. Spider-Man started as a high school student, and he graduated, he went to college, he graduated, he got a job, he got married, so he grew up. And that's what makes Spider-Man a successful character, because he starts a teen with problems, and more problems than most teens. He has to go through his trauma that makes him to carry the weight of the world on his shoulders, and this is why the scene, the Ditko scene where he holds a lot of debris and rising up, is so iconic, because that's Spider-Man. He's carrying the weight of the world on his shoulders, and he goes through a lot. He goes through a lot of challenges, and he always gets the blame for things he didn't do. Now, get Kamala Khan. She doesn't grow. She's trapped in a state of arrested development where she's like trying to be the perfect daughter or perfect student, to be there for her friends and also do superhero stuff, and she's never going to deal with the burden she has. She's not growing. As you walk through this comic book, you get the impression that she doesn't grow because she's never challenged properly. She's dealing with jokey villains. She is constantly facing storms in a teacup, and she barely makes it because she makes her life harder. It's not like her villains create complications for her. She creates her own complications. That's not great. That doesn't reflect great on her. And where Spider-Man grew and fought some enemies that were spectacular, amazing, against insurmountable odds, and made it through, Kamala does not do that. Actually, the reason why Kamala Khan broke during Civil War II is because for once she was thrown into a grown-up lot, and you can see that she cannot cope in a grown-up lot. She's made for Saturday morning cartoon / teen drama plots in her own neck of the woods, in her own backyard world of New Jersey, with teenage problems and angst, and teenagers going on protests every second week when something goes wrong and winning the day. When having to make a tough choice, she went on being her dumb self. She got herself involved in a dumb situation, and somebody else paid the price for it. Bruno paid the price. She ruined the life of somebody she was supposed to love, I guess, because she was stupid, and that doesn't reflect good because we've never seen her do something spectacular before. You just wake up and realize, oh shit, she's stupid. She's a stupid girl who is cosplaying as a superhero. And I don't know why this happens really. I don't think that the creative team is bad. The artists are definitely not bad. I think that Willow Wilson is a gifted writer. I think she has a nice style. She can write fun comics, a lot of teen drama and acts. Maybe she's not interested in doing such a superhero comic, and she was forced because of editorial to do the storyline. And since she's not the one deciding the story, maybe it's Brian Michael Bendis who destroyed Kamala Khan, not Willow Wilson. But really, the entire series feels like wasted opportunity. It would have been one great comic book, and instead it's just a great first act and a series constantly declining in quality. And maybe it's because there was no planning there. It happens a lot. You have a good idea, you make the comic book, then you have to go on and ongoing, and you just wing it. Maybe the price of success meant that the team couldn't go that wild. They had to conform to marketing or the expectations of the press, of the audience, of the parents of the audience. I don't know, but I can say that reading the Willow Wilson run of Miss Marvel makes me feel that there was a lot of promise here. Marvel could have had a new Spider-Man, but instead we didn't get a superhero to admire. We got someone who we want to hug and say everything will be alright. We're going to comfort Kamala Khan. That's not great. And I'm not sure how all the writers have dealt with the character. I have not read the Champions or the All New Different Adventures, I haven't read the Saladin Ahmed version of Kamala Khan, that is volume 3 I guess, and definitely I'm expecting that the TV show will definitely fix a lot of the issues of the comic book series. I mean, for once it's an Inhuman no more, and that's already a huge improvement. I'd love to hear your opinions. I'd love to read all your comments about how I'm a evil Nazi or a bleeding heart as JW, and maybe your honest opinions about the comic book and the character, and I'll see you soon. Thank you for watching.